Hello, students. We were in the midst of learning lasers. This is the second video on lasers. Just a quick recap of what we did in the last video. I told you the laser is nothing but it is an acronym of light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Then we looked into what is meant by population of the state. N1 and N2 here refer to population of the state, where E1 and E2 are the energies. What is Boltzmann factor? It is the factor which connects the population of state 1 to population of state 2. N2 by N1 is given by this, and as I told, in any given circumstance N1 is hugely greater than N2. It is because the ground state is the state which is energetically favorable. Since E1 is less than E2, E1 is far less than E2, N1 is greater than the N1 is far greater than N2, and that is given by this factor. Okay. Then we looked into three ways in which radiation can interact with matter. One is induced absorption. The rate is given by this expression. Next is spontaneous emission, where there is a emission by itself and the rate is given by this. The detailed discussion was done in the last video. And third way is stimulated emission. The rate is given by this. And then we introduced what is known as thermal equilibrium. What is a thermal equilibrium? It is a thermal equilibrium is a state in which the energy exchange due to emission and absorption process occurs in such a way that the population of each state remains unaltered. So what are Einstein coefficients? It is the way of connecting these three under thermal equilibrium. So how did he connect? This was the basic equation. Under thermal equilibrium, rate of induced absorption is equal to rate of spontaneous emission plus rate of stimulated emission. So we considered the coefficients and the expression and finally arrived at this. So these two were the results which we got by comparing the coefficients. I think in the last video by slip of tongue I told the probability of induced absorption is equal to probability of stimulated emission. That happened by slip of tongue. What I meant was the coefficient of, that is what I have written here, the coefficient of induced absorption is equal to coefficient of stimulated emission. The probability or the rate are not equal because there is a factor. There is always this factor B12 comes with a different factor. Actually this comes with N1, this comes with N2. So the correct statement would be the coefficient of induced absorption is equal to the coefficient of stimulated emission. This would be the correct statement. And A21 and B21, this is spontaneous emission to stimulated emission is connected by this factor. This became the theoretical foundation of construction of laser. Now let's look into, if you want to physically construct a laser, what are the conditions under which laser operates. In spite of having this theoretical mechanism, there are some factors which need to be taken which need to be considered. And what are those factors? Those factors are these two. Okay, that is population inversion and metastable state, and these are called conditions of laser action. Okay, so population inversion and metastable state are called conditions of laser action. So what are these? First of all, what is population inversion? If you remember Boltzmann's law, this is what it says. And what does it say? If you have energy E1 and E2, due to the minimum energy principle, more number of atoms lie in the ground state of having an energy E1 than in E2, right? That's why this connects I had told you in that while explaining the Boltzmann's law. So under normal circumstances, N2 is far greater than N1 is far greater than N2. So what is population inversion? In order to make this lasing thing happen, it can happen only by emission, that too stimulated emission. For stimulated emission to happen, you need more number of system or more number of atoms in the higher energy state than that of the lower energy state. Okay, so you have to invert this condition, or at least make n2 greater than n1. Left to itself, the population of n1 will be greater than that of n2. But what is meant by population inversion? For this stimulated emission to happen, you need more number of atoms in the higher energy state than in the lower energy state. To do and the way of doing that process in which you are going to invert the population, that means you are going to make n2 greater than n1, is what is known as population inversion. This is a must for the action of laser, because the laser action happens by stimulated emission. For stimulated emission to happen, you need more number of atoms in the higher state, which is not naturally possible. So for to achieve this, how shall we do that? There is another problem related to this. Supposing that you have atoms here, you excite it using an energy, it goes here. But the problem with any normal state like E3, which I have shown E3, the lifespan of an average atom in the higher energy state is very small. Okay, it is so small that the population, you can never achieve population inversion. For that, what we do is, there are some states called metastable states. We take refuge of that state. And what are these metastable states? As I told you, first, supposing that I have two levels, E1 and E3. Whenever I excite here, it will immediately come back in a very short span of time. So what I need to do is, I need to have another level E2, such that if I just pump, or if I just excite the atoms to E3, it will not immediately fall to E1, it will go and fall on E2. Okay, in the first process. But E2 should be such that there the atoms stay longer. It cannot stay there forever. But what you can make is, you can make the lifespan of the atoms here longer. And these states in which atoms can be there for a longer period of time, that is, it is 10 to the power 5 of 10 to the power 5 times greater than the normal state. E3 is the normal state. There it can stay only for 10 power minus 9 second or 8 second. Okay, if you can make the lifespan to 10 power minus 3 second, which is 10 power 5 times larger than the normal state, these states are called metastable states. So these two are called the conditions of laser action. So what to repeat once again, for laser action to occur, you need two things. Actually, you need one thing, that is population inversion. To do that, you need metastable state. Population inversion is a condition in which left naturally n1 is always far greater than n2. If you invert this, that is making n2 greater than n1, this is what is known as population inversion. How are you going to achieve it? You are going to achieve it usually by a metastable state. And what is a metastable state? Metastable state differs by normal state, because if you just excite an atom to the normal state, it will in the normal state the atom will stay there only for a short span of time. It will come back due to the minimum energy principle. It will come back to the original ground state in 10 power minus 8 or minus 9 seconds. If you can make this to stay longer, then this population inversion is possible. Otherwise, as soon as you send it, it will come back, so there will be no population inversion. For that, you need to have metastable state, and E2 is one such metastable state in which things can stay there for 10 power minus 3 second, which is 10 power 5 times more than the normal state. And these two are what are known as conditions of laser action. Then we will what is the physical infrastructure which you would be requiring to produce a laser? These are called the requisites of laser system. And what are these? What are all the things you must be needing? You need a cavity. Okay, this is the cavity, and this is the active medium. Active medium is the medium in which the lasing happens. This is what is known as active medium. It could be helium neon, it could be carbon dioxide, anything where the lasing action happens, where the laser is produced. This is what the active medium is. Okay, so please remember, in the active medium laser gets produced, but at if you have one atom can produce only one photon. You need multiple reflections of that, so that the laser light which is coming out, emerging out, is strong enough. So on one side you have a completely silvered mirror, which means nothing goes out of this. On the other side you have a partially silvered mirror, because after a particular intensity is reached, this must allow the laser light to go. So after multiple reflection and multiple stimulated emissions, if your beam is strong enough, that can get out of this. That's why you should have a partially silvered mirror, and you must also have an excitation source. Why this excitation source? Means in order to excite the atoms or molecules to the higher energy state, so that, and metastable state, all those things it must excite, so that you will have lasing action. Okay, few terminology here. What is an active medium? Active medium is a solid, liquid, gas medium in which stimulated emission and amplification of radiations can be achieved. That happens here. Okay, that is what is active medium is. Then pumping. What do you mean by pumping? It is the supply of energy. That's what this one does. That it is the supply of energy to the atoms in the lower energy state in order to excite them to the higher energy state. And the requisites of laser system are three. The first one is you need an active medium which supports the population inversion. The second one is the excitation source for pumping action. So active medium is where the lasers are produced. Excitation source gives you the energy, and the laser cavity where everything happens. This is the heart of any laser thing, whenever you want to produce laser. Okay, so now before we can discuss, so after this we can actually discuss how a particular type of laser is produced, and let's first discuss what are known as semiconductor lasers. Okay, so two lasers we have to study. One is called one is called the carbon dioxide laser, and the second one is called the semiconductor laser. We will take up carbon dioxide laser in the next video. In this video we shall study how a semiconductor laser is made up of. Before that, a few basics of semiconductors. You must be knowing what is a semiconductor. Semiconductor is a material whose conductivity lies between that of a metal and an insulator. Okay, and you must have studied in your PUC or your pre-university classes that what is the defining feature which differentiates a metal and an insulator and a semiconductor. It is what is known as a band gap. Okay, all the valence electrons reside in this. All the empty shells reside here. This is called the conduction band, and this is the valence band. When do you call some conduction is happening? Because valence electrons contains electrons. When they cross this gap and go to the conduction band, that is when you say the conduction has happened. Okay, this is the band theory picture of conduction. And this electron, when it goes here, okay, it can well be thought of as a deficiency of an electron is hole. So it can also be thought of as a hole was already here and it came here. Okay, this is electron, this is hole. This you remember, I think. Valence band is the band in which electrons reside, and conduction band is a band in which holes are there. When electron crosses over this gap and goes to the conduction band, that is when we call something to be conducting. And it is this gap which defines whether something is a insulator or a metal or a semiconductor. For metals and all, it will be overlapping. The conduction band and valence band is overlapping. If the difference between these two is very large, for example 7 electron volts, let's say, then at normal temperatures the electrons don't have enough energy to cross over. That's why this is called an insulator. right? And what is a semiconductor? If the band gap is very small, small in the sense it is of the order of 1 electron volt, so that even at normal temperatures few electrons can cross over this, that is what is known as a semiconductor. And what is the this is how the differentiation is made, the based on the band gap. If the band gap is 0, that is called a metal. If the band gap is very large, greater than 6, that is what is known as an insulator. If the band gap is moderate, it is not 0, it is not very large, that is what is known as a semiconductor. Okay, this is something, this is a refresher lesson from your PU which you must be knowing. Okay, in semiconductors you are having in semiconductors you have intrinsic semiconductor, which is the pure form of the semiconductor. You have extrinsic semiconductors, which is by doping. Okay, if you dope it with a trivalent impurity, you will get a n-type semiconductor. If you dope it with a pentavalent impurity, you will get a p-type semiconductor. These things you already know. That's why I am not going to dilate on this topic, but this is something you must be knowing. So, but one thing which I must tell you here, which you will learn about this in the module 5, whenever you go to module 5, you can define for in band theory. Okay, you can define something called as Fermi energy. Okay, what is that Fermi energy? Fermi energy is, for now you just take it as a definition, it is the topmost occupied energy level at T is equal to 0. At 0 Kelvin, okay, when you put an electron, you remember electron due to Pauli's exclusion principle, if this is the energy well, okay, you in one energy level there can be only 2 electrons, because what does the Pauli's exclusion principle say? It says that no 2 electrons can have all the 4 quantum numbers same. That's why in one energy level at the max you can have one electron with spin up and the other electron with spin down. If you put the third, you cannot put it here because that would violate Pauli's exclusion principle. So it has to go to the higher energy level. Supposing that you have an assembly of electrons in any this one, the topmost occupied energy level. So you go on putting this, the topmost occupied energy level at absolute 0. That is what is known as Fermi energy. And please remember this, it is the topmost occupied energy level at absolute 0 is what is known as Fermi energy, and this plays a very important role in our discussion on semiconductor laser, because this is very important. So that Fermi energy, the topmost occupied energy level for an intrinsic semiconductor, is exactly in between the conduction band and valence band. This is called EF. Okay, this is this EF is exactly in between the conduction and valence band for an intrinsic semiconductor. This you have to remember. Okay, and then for a n-type semiconductor, how do you make an n-type semiconductor? N-type semiconductor is made by doping electrons, right? When electrons are majority carriers, then only you can have n-type semiconductor. So how do you do it? By putting more and more electrons, right? So when you put more and more electrons, what will happen to the highest level? It will go up. In an intrinsic semiconductor, it was exactly in between. Okay, how do you make a n-type semiconductor by an intrinsic semiconductor? You go on putting more electrons to it. This is a very rough picture. This is not how it happens, but you can understand, impressionistically you can understand that when you have more and more electrons into it, this topmost occupied level goes up. That's why it is towards the conduction band in n-type material. That's why it is not exactly in between. This is the in between. So the Fermi level shifts towards the conduction band, right? So this is what happens in n-type material. For p-type material, what happens? For p-type, how do you do it? You can take an intrinsic semiconductor, go on adding holes. And what is holes? Hole is nothing but a deficiency of an electron. Once again, it's an impressionistic picture. So if you just you can understand it like this. If you just pluck out electrons from this, what happens to the topmost level? It sinks. It starts coming low below. So if this was the intrinsic level, since you have put in holes that is equivalent to taking out electrons, you can understand it to be the Fermi energy moved towards the valence band. So this is what you must understand in this entire picture. For an intrinsic semiconductor, let me repeat myself again. What is Fermi energy? Fermi energy is the topmost occupied energy level at absolute zero. Okay. For an intrinsic semiconductor, it is exactly in between the conduction band and the valence band. For a n-type material, since you are adding electrons to it, this is where the intrinsic level is. It moves up because you are adding electrons, right? So it moves up, it moves towards the conduction band. In a p-type material, since you are adding holes, which is nothing but the deficiency of the electron, it moves towards the valence band. And this picture you must always remember while understanding this, because our whole semiconductor laser is based on this concept. Okay, now let's go back to this. Okay, now what is the principle on which this semiconductor laser operates? Let's first understand what is the operating principle of this. It is based on p-n junction. What is a p-n junction? This is the p-n junction. Okay, what is showed. When a p-n junction is forward biased, the conduction band electrons from from the n side combine with the valence band holes in the depletion region. During the recombination of electron hole pair, a radiation is emitted from the junction. For silicon and germanium, the radiation is in infrared region. That's why we are not using silicon, either silicon or germanium. As you might be knowing, the famous examples of semiconductors are silicon and germanium, but the energy gap, you get laser in the infrared region. That's why we are not going to use silicon and germanium, which are semiconductors. We are using gallium arsenide as the base material. So this is the gallium arsenide laser which we are using, whose if the emission of this happens to be in the emission of this happens to be in the visible region. The population inversion at the junction is established by allowing large current. First, let's go through the conduction. You take a single crystal gallium arsenide, and one side of that is heavily doped with one side of it is heavily doped. Both the sides are heavily doped. One becomes a heavily doped p type, and other side becomes a heavily doped n side. Okay, wherever these two meet, they will meet in a region, and this region is called the depletion region. Okay, so this is I am talking about the construction. You take a gallium arsenide laser, make one by doping, make one side of it completely p type, make the other side of it completely n type. Join them. Wherever you join them, that is when it becomes a junction. The opposite, you polish all the faces, all the opposite faces, so that the laser can come out only here. Okay, so this is how the initial construction is. Then you have metal contacts here so that you can bias this, right? You can have bias this, and this is how the construction of gallium arsenide laser is done. Now, what is the operating principle? The operating principle is like this. On one side you have p type, the second this one is n type, this is n type, this is p type. Below is the depletion region. This is where the lasing happens. What actually happens? Let's first look into this diagram, and that is why this becomes very, very important. Even though I have an option to bias here, when I don't bias, means when I don't supply anything, either for forward bias or reverse bias, I have not done. This is how the energy level diagram looks like. On this side, this is the top side, this is the p side, this is the n side. And you can easily see here that when you heavily dope it, the Fermi level goes below the valence band. Okay, this is the conduction band, This is the valence band. And what is in an intrinsic semiconductor, it is exactly in between. When you heavily dope it, it goes below the valence band. That's why this is the p type. You remember that. This is the depletion region where the changeover takes place. So this till here it is till here it is the p type. That till from here it is n type. The region between them is called the depletion region. And as you can see in the n type, there is a valence band, there is a conduction band. And intrinsic semiconductor, it was exactly in between. By putting electrons, you have made the Fermi level rise above, and this is where the Fermi energy is this. Now, how do you generate a laser? This is called the degenerate p and n semiconductors. They are used to form p-n junction, as you can see, and when the now what I am going to make is, I am going to make this junction. This is how it was in unbiased condition. When I make this forward bias, for what do you mean by forward bias? First of all, this is p type, this is positive rich, hole rich, this is electron rich. If I connect it to positive, is connected to positive and negative is connected to negative, this is what is known as a forward bias. So what happens? So when positive is connected to positive, when it is when the junction is forward bias, the energy level shifts. And how do they shift? They shift as it is shown here. Okay. So due to this biasing, the width of the depletion region decreases. This is what you know from your PU classes. Though if you apply a forward bias, the depletion layer decreases due to the injection of charge carriers into the depletion region. See here, this is electron rich, this will inject electrons, this will inject holes. Okay. At the junction, the electron hole recombination takes place and the energy is emitted as photons for small voltages. Okay. For small biasing voltages, the current in the diode is small and the recombination causes spontaneous emission. They don't cause stimulated emission for small voltages, because there is a recombination, and that is what causes spontaneous emission. And spontaneous emission is no good because it doesn't produce a laser. But if the current is increased and if it reaches the threshold value, then what happens? The concentration of electrons and holes in the depletion region become very high, and hence the population inversion condition is achieved in the junction. As you can see here, when for huge currents, the electron gets flooded into this region, the holes get flooded into this region, we are in now a state of population inversion. The narrow region where population inversion is achieved is called the active region, where the lasing action takes place. The photons traveling in the junction along the resonant cavity stimulate further recombination of electron hole pairs, to which the intensity of the coherent light builds up along the axis and cavity, leading to the emission of laser from the junction. This is what happens. Okay. So first, in unbiased this is the condition. As you supply small current, there will be erratic recombination, but that will produce a spontaneous emission. For stimulated emission to happen, you should apply a huge current. When huge current happens, remember this is n type. N type is already negative rich. When you forward biases, n is connected to n, so all the electrons are going to flood here. When you connect p to p, all the holes are going to flood here. So now you have reached a population inversion in which these things are very ready for a spontaneous emission. Now any stray photon which is coming can induce a stimulated emission, and as I told you, in stimulated emission, one photon influences electron to combine with hole, and it will produce a second photon. So this is where the laser is produced. Actually, in this region, this is where the laser can be tapped out, and this is the entire process of how you are going to achieve laser using semiconductor. These are very popular because this laser can be produced in pentorch, means it can be made in all the pointers and all. These are called solid state lasers. That is why you can easily produce it in a small crystal of a semiconductor, and this became very popular because it was very portable. And these lasers have many characteristics: monochromaticity, coherence, unidirectionality, and brightness. What is monochromaticity? It is high, the light emitted is in the very small frequency band. It does not have a very broad frequency band. It is very sharp as far as frequency is concerned. Coherence, this means laser is these are highly coherent because of the stimulated emission of photons which have same wavelength and frequency. Unidirectional, they don't spread around. And brightness, it is much brighter than the ordinary source of light. This is the so let's stop here, and in the next